710 ESPN, ESPNLA.com. Kamenetzky brothers here, Brian and Andy. Welcome to the second week of Trojan Corner. This is Trojan Corner. This is the corner for the Trojans.
It's not an exact corner, by the way.
Corner adjacent to the other end.
This is not what you would put baby in. This is not a true corner.
It's too round for that. But we will be here every home game talking to great Trojans of past and present. And joining us right now, Paul McDonald, former Trojan quarterback, now doing the radio analysis on the broadcast here at 710. Thanks so much for coming by. We really appreciate it.
It's always great to be here, guys. It's fun. You've been doing this? Did you do this last week?
Last week was the first week with Chris Claiborne.
Right.
Okay.
And then you
how
are
was
this,
Chris? How was
Chris was good.
Yep.
Chris was good.
He's a big guy.
He is a big guy.
He said you're not having Paul McDonald, are you?
Is that what he said?
Yeah, so because otherwise, if you are, then I'm not sure this is the show for me. But afterwards, he was okay.
Oh, good.
We just
Good,
lied
good.
to him.
So you got a sense of humor, huh, Brian?
I try.
Yeah,
I have a sense of humor. I don't think
gotta-
people find me funny, but
Yeah, you got to try a little harder. That's what I was
right.
just going to say.
Talk about its first Pac-12 game.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? I mean, is it in terms of the conference, in terms of the history, all that?
I mean, it's a watershed moment, obviously. I was in the Pac-8 when we added Arizona. Arizona State became the Pac-10, and that was huge, and now everyone thinks it's always the Pac-10, but it used to be the Pac-8, you know? So I think it's going to be changed. It's going to, send a ripple effect throughout the western part of the country for football, and who knows where it goes from there, you know? Maybe we stop it when we get to 16 next year. Who knows?
Do you like when these changes take place? I mean, is there ever a point where you say, even knowing that nothing ever stays the same forever, there are traditions have to be honored,
And they tried to do that. They tried to do that, right? With the Pac-12, you got the South and the North, but they kept SC playing Cal,
Sure.
SC playing Stanford, so they kept those traditions. Obviously, the southern part, you've got those traditions. You got some new ones now with Utah and Colorado. Change is life. Change is life. You got to go with the flow. If you resist it, you're going to be left in the dust. So you got to just play the hand that's dealt you.
Is this as unstable a time in college football as you can remember, between sanctions, between conference realignment and all that?
Well, I remember getting questioned when I was playing back in the dark ages about should there be a playoff system? I mean, this story's been going on for decades and decades, right? And it may never end. This is one step closer to that, obviously. If you're looking at maybe 4 super conferences with 16, and then it lends itself to a better format, right? So you're not missing class and all this stuff, so the presidents can come on board. So, but unsettling, yes. I honestly think that the system needs to be relooked at. The whole NC2A and how they operate and what they do. And I think that's good, that's healthy to do. If you're running a business, you just don't keep doing the same thing. You've done it forever and ever and ever. You always relook at what you do and how you do it. How can we improve? What should we do? The question is, who's in charge over there? And it's going to take, do they have a board of directors? Generally you look at a board of directors and they say, oh, we need to look at this again. Let's bring in a new CEO, a new this, and we'll make changes. I don't think they have a board of directors.
Yeah. And you got skin in this, though, because in 1978, you dealt with your own controversy about who's number one. Your team.
Correct. Yeah, right. I mean, we all, believe me, we felt we were number one
but
because the other team.
One could argue you were biased.
Well, we beat them. I mean,
Exactly.
we head to head. I mean, we beat them. I mean, biased.
Coaches agreed.
That's not biased. We played them in Birmingham, beat those guys. So, I think they know.
Well, I'm biased. I went to SC.
I
agree with you.
I'm just saying, if it wasn't head to head, I'd agree with you.
Right.
But it was head to head, and we had that. So. There's Ricky Ellison. Always looking to be on stage, Ricky. You want to come up here? Here, take the mic.
When you look at
Ricky Ellison was on the 78 team. He was there, right? We beat Alabama in Birmingham. Case closed. Not even close. Not even close. Done deal.
Okay.
All right. See, so argue with him. I'm easy.
But
He's not as easy.
my point is, you have dealt with injustice, Paul.
What's that? Yeah, I know. That thing will always haunt me. Whatever.
what?
Andy, we had a question?
I was going to say, my point is, you've dealt with this injustice firsthand. You know what it's like when, in your mind, you are the number one team, but you're not getting that due, even just sharing it that year.
Agreed. I think, personally, my opinion, for whatever it's worth, I'd love to see a playoff somehow. I think it's cool. I think the fans want it. I think it drives revenue, and the people that are involved with the money would probably want it. And I'm not sure who doesn't want it. The Bulls, I know, there's a way to figure it. If you want to make anything happen, you can figure it out. The question is, do people want to make it happen?
Where do you think, Matt? I mean, you were, I believe, 22-1 as a starter at
22-1-1.
Yeah, the tie. We'll let that swing. I mean, I'm sure there's something you could have done about that. 22-1, and since Pat Hayden was a great quarterback here, and Matt Leinart, and there's a great list of players. Where does Matt Barkley have the chance to finish on the list of great Trojans quarterbacks?
He's a little handicapped when you look at all those, comparing the other guys, because they didn't have sanctions, right? I mean, they got to play in bowl games. They got to have a chance to be national champs and all that. He's not going to have that unless he stays another year, which remains to be seen. So I think it's hard to compare with him. It's hard to compare anyway. It's hard to compare me with Pat Hayden, hard to compare Leinart with me. It's different. The game changes. So my point is that he is an outstanding player. More than importantly than that, he's an outstanding individual. I mean, in today's day, in college football, when all you read about are the negative people making mistakes, which we all do. We're all human beings, by the way. Just that the athletes get printed in the paper, the normal people don't. It's nice to have a guy like Matt Leinart, with Matt being just absolutely as pure as a driven snow kind of kid and a face of the program. So it's really refreshing.
What's your overall impression of this year's team? I mean, you talked about some of the limited weapons Barkley had compared to, say, you or Matt Leinart or Hayden.
He's got one really good receiver in Robert Woods now.
Yeah.
I mean, I had some good receivers, but I don't know if they're as good as Robert Woods at that age.
Really?
I mean, true freshman. That guy is ridiculously good. So they'll find some, and they've got some other young. I mean, Marquise Lee, very impressive guy. We haven't really seen George Farmer. Last week on the show, I said that I don't think John Jackson, All-American receiver for USC, could have started in high school at Gardena. Sarah High, Gardena. That's where all those guys are from, right?
All three guys.
All three of those guys are from.
All three of them.
Unbelievable program. But they have some excellent young receivers. The running back situation has been in flux, since Lendale White was here and Reggie Bush was here, quite frankly. It's been, there hasn't been that guy, right? It's been running back by committee. That's the thing that's missing, I think.
Right.
And maybe it's Mark Tyler. He comes back today. How much is he going to play? That's the big question. I'm really interested in that. I hope he has a lot of opportunity. I think he'll play well. I think it's something that the Trojans need, a guy that can run between the tackles and bang and move a pile a little bit. They got a bunch of good players, but they're under 200, and he's a 230-pound back.
Where does the offensive line fit in that, though? Because this is this isn't just an issue for today. And we're talking to Paul McDonald, USC radio analyst, Trojan Corner here at 710 ESPN.
1979 All-American.
That's right. This isn't just a one-day issue. How do they beat Utah? This is a season-long issue. How do they beat anybody when you have a reconstructed offensive line?
The game is really simple. Okay, you control the line of scrimmage, you're probably going to win the game. There are some exceptions to that if you have turnovers and stuff like that, but if you control the line of scrimmage, you're going to do really well, and you're going to be in every single game. That is a big question, Brian, because it's a new offensive line. You only have one guy starting at the same position, Matt Khalil. You've got Khalid Holmes, who was moved from right guard to center, and he's a good player, but he's still adjusting too. He had the snap over the head of Barkley last week.
The backwards punt.
That's right. He had there were two other. One was a fumbled snap that the Trojans recovered. Another one was a bobble that impacted the play a little bit. So he's still working out the kinks. The other guys are brand new. They haven't even played. So it remains to be seen. When you look at the offensive line, it's five guys working together. It's not one guy. It's not two. It's five people working together and communicating. And you've got to have a bond. You've got to have time together. You have to know one another. You have to understand the language, and that is got to develop this season for the Trojans to continue to improve.
I wanted to ask you, Paul, about the 1978 team you played on. Just a few of the names involved. Paul McDonald, obviously. Marcus Allen, Ronnie Lott, Anthony Munoz, Charles White, Chip Banks. We just saw Ricky Ellison running around here. 37 guys from that team ended up playing in the NFL. Is there any added pressure, actually, when you're on a team that good, with just the idea of, well, of course you're going to win. Of course you're going to win it all. You're going to be the best out there.
The Trojans were always good in that era. They always had really good players. I don't think we saw it that way. The interesting thing about that team, you can talk to John Robinson about that. He'd be interesting to talk about because he was the coach. There were no stars on that team. There were no stars. There were, from the perspective of the fan watching, wow, you're a really good player and you're a star. But on the team, there were no stars. Everyone worked hard. Everyone believed in the other guy. Everyone supported the other person. The expectation was high. We held each other accountable. There were no egos. There really were no egos. It's hard to imagine that.
Is that because and Andy just mentioned the number? Is that because there were so many good players?
Right.
Yeah, there were so many good players.
You almost canceled each other out.
Personally, I was just glad to be there. I mean, I was glad they gave me the opportunity, and I fortunately did well. And believe me, I did not want to come off the field. Did not want to, and I'm sure there were a lot of other players that felt that way. I don't think there was anybody. Well, maybe Charles White. Even him. I don't think there was any. He just didn't want to come off because he didn't want to come off. But I don't think there was anybody who would say, it's okay. I can take a couple games off, and no. I mean, it was hardcore competition. Marv Goo was the defensive line coach back then. He really kind of instilled some of that in Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll spent a lot of time with Marv Goo. I mean, big man on big man, we practiced hard, we worked hard, it was competition. And that's the one thing that Pete did. He got back, you got those players coming in, enough good players that wanted to play, great competition in practice, and when you have great competition in practice and a lot of good players, you're going to win a lot of games.
What did you mentioned John Robinson, what did he do to make that work? I mean, whether you're talking about him or even expand it wider, what makes a great college coach, what allows them to be effective?
I think whoever you are, you have to be who you are. You have to be authentic, and I think Pete Carroll was authentic. John Robinson was there. He was definitely himself. John Robinson was a lot like Pete Carroll, with not as much, maybe not as much energy, but he was very passionate about his players, very passionate about the game. He got in there and coached at practice with the offensive line, the defensive line, whatever. And you love playing for a guy like that. I mean, you love to see a guy like that has that kind of fiery attitude, that kind of passion. And he got us fired up. He got us ready to play. And he demanded the first meeting. We walk into the auditorium. I'm a true freshman. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? We walk in. The first meeting, my first day on campus, was he wrote up, beat UCLA, beat Notre Dame, win the Rose Bowl, win a national title. And I'm like, wow, the bar's pretty high here. And it was. And that's what the expectation was, and that's what was demanded upon all of us. And so consequently, we worked really hard because of it. There's my guy over there, Charles White. Wow.
There he is.
My man. This is the guy that made my life easy, Charles White right here. Just hand off to him, and everyone 8-man in the box, and I just had man-to-man coverage.
You know those big boys up front took care of us?
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about those guys.
Yeah, they were doing their job like they're supposed to do.
How good were they?
6,000 yards later, they're pretty darn good, I would say.
No one's ever going to come close to you in that record that you have with the yards rushing. It's unbelievable. And I got the pleasure of watching him on virtually every play. Well, certainly the last 2 years, every play, and just hand off and just watch. And I was just smiling. I was like, wow, I got the best seat in the house.
Yeah, well, you're a competitor too now, and don't fool these people here now. It was great to watch you work also.
So how good a quarterback did you make Paul McDonald?
He was already good. I mean, when you get a scholarship, to come to the university, you're pretty darn good, especially back in that time, even in this time, to get a scholarship. That's telling you something about the young man and his ability in sports.
Actually, Charles, Paul, I'll ask you both this. The names from that team, as we talked about before, whole lot of really good players. Who do you both think was the most underrated member of that team? Of the 1978 team. The most underrated member of the 1978 team, because there were so many big names that came out of that team.
Wow.
That's a tough question, huh, Charles? Ooh. I mean, that's maybe. Let me jump in here. I'm gonna interrupt you. Ray Peters, okay, because we go into Arizona State. And a lot of people are saying, well, who's Ray Peters? We go into Arizona State to play the Sun Devils, and we got bushwhacked. Frank Kush was the coach there. We were kind of thinking, we're going to go beat these guys. First year in the Pac-10, whatever. They came from the WAC. And they were good, though, right? They were good. And we had injuries at centers. We didn't have a center. We had a problem getting the snap. I couldn't even get the snap from center, turn around and give it to Charles. I couldn't do it. It didn't work because of our precision, how we did things. So we lost that game. And Ray Peters jumped in at the end of that game and did pretty well, like in the fourth quarter. And after that, he was our starting center, and he did awesome, right?
I agree. Yeah, he did an awesome job, and just fit in, just fit right in.
And he came from nose guard. He was a nose guard, and we moved in offense.
That is truly impressive.
So he is the most underrated guy on that team, and he, quite frankly, had a lot to do with what we did the rest of the way and all the way winning the title.
Yes, that's absolutely right, Paul.
About says it all. I think we're going to wrap up the Trojan Corner.
I'm a little curious, as long as we have you here, because we know in Charles White, and this is Trojan Corner, Paul McDonald, Charles White, Andy and Brian Kamenetzky. What makes a great running back? What do you have to do? Because there's so many ways to skin it, but is there one thing that a great running back has to have to succeed?
He has to be a competitor. I mean, to compete at all times. And when I accept to come to USC, there was a player by the name of Ricky Bell, Dwight Ford, Rod, can't think of his name. Anyway, I came in and I was the maybe the fourth string running back. And then things happened, but I kept competing. And all of a sudden, I'm backing up Ricky Bell. And that's what it takes for be a true competitor.
And that's what the people who come behind you had to do. That Marcus had to do eventually, and that Reggie Bush had to do at some point. Lendale, everybody has to do that. Is that part of the ethic of recruiting at USC? I'll ask both of you guys that.
Yeah, well, I believe so. I mean, who wants to be second string? If you don't have no ambition to be, I thought about the Heisman Trophy back when I was my first year, winning it, and I thought about the national championship my first year, winning it. And we came short of that, but that's what it takes for. I truly have to say a competitor.
I mean, you're on the team to win, right? And so, and things are not going to go well in certain situations. Remember, we were down in LSU. Remember that game, Charles? We were down there, and they, probably the loudest place I've ever been. You couldn't hear. You could not hear. And we survived that, but it took everybody playing together, everybody believing that we were going to survive it, and competing. Like Charles said, keep working till the end of the gun goes off at the end of the game, and we were able to pull that out. And those are the kind of guys you want. You have a lot of guys like that, you're going to win a lot of games and win some titles maybe.
Okay, now I think we might. I had one more. As a former high school tailback.
Well, if you're going to ask one more, I may ask one more.
We have so much in common, you and me.
Say that again?
Because I was a running back in high school. I feel like we have so much in common.
Okay.
Take away the talent discrepancy, you guys are basically the same athlete.
Yeah, so you had one more, Andy?
When you guys in 78, when you beat Notre Dame, you went up against a guy under center named Joe Montana. Did you guys have any idea at that point that he would emerge as Joe Montana? Like that he would be that good?
When they beat the crap out of us, I'm going to be serious for you. When he came, I mean, we were up, I think anyway, and Joe Montana, the second half, just shine. And I said that man's going to be something on the next level. And I thought he was going to be something special.
He did. I mean, he was. I mean, in college, he was horrible in the first half. He came back in the second half, threw for 300 yards, like Charles was saying. We were winning the game, and all of a sudden we had to fight and battle to kick a field goal with no time on the clock to win that one. But yeah, we knew this guy was really, really good and special. But I think also, again, he was placed in a really great situation, as I was placed in a great situation coming to USC. And Charles and Joe Montana, with under the tutelage of Bill Walsh and my old coach Paul Hackett, who was awesome technician, and Jerry Rice around him, and Roger Craig, and all these guys. I mean, he was in a great position to flourish, and he did. So no surprise that he did.
It's the last one I got. I just thinking about.
We can stay up here all day, guys. We got all kinds of stuff, but I love this guy, Charles. He is my man. We looked eyeball to eyeball. heart to heart in the huddle in tough situations, and there's nobody that I'd want to have more in the foxhole with me than this guy right here.
Well, thank you, Pete. Vice versa.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming by. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.